Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen? We are back for some more of the river survival mode.
Yep, exactly true, Sonic, because today we have decided to able to play as the girls, of course.
But this time around though, we're actually going to be, first time we're ever going to be playing as, ever since in Mario Party Star Rush, now we'll have to be Princess Peach. So,
yeah, alongside with those computer players, we have Daisy, Rosalina, and Pom Pom as the female players. So,
but even then though, just like any forms of how it does in yesterday's video, is the fact that we're going to be pedaled from the left side. So even then though,
that hopefully whenever we get to the third playthrough or the fourth run through of this particular mode, then we can able to switch things around by simply able to actually pedal from the right as opposed to the left.
But even then though, let's get this thing to it. So
yeah, let's get this thing onto it, the actual mode itself. So
now obviously that, welcome back for more Let's Play of Super Mario Party, of course. And I'm Sonic the Hedgehog here from the Maxi Toys.
And also, I'm the one and only Pinkie Pie here. So hey, every pony and everyone else around here across the world. So welcome to you all.
So anyways though, so let's go ahead and get ourselves, the first minigame balloon out of the way, even though that I'm pretty sure we've already played through all 10 of those minigames, so there's no explanations here. So even then though, from the start though, we are about to be playing Suit Yourselves. So yeah, I bet it's going to be way too long than it used to be.
Easily the most longest minigame in the whole entire game so far.
Yeah, which is definitely true. And yeah, let's just hope if we can able to actually get ourselves our perfect run-through of this particular minigame, of course, because after, our first run-through of this mode, then we actually did this pretty flawlessly.
Yeah, because after all, that we already know the actual card locations, so expecting as such, then we already know what this is going, so
yeah, let's just get into the actual main treatment of the forms of well, there's not much else we can able to talk about this, because obviously we've already mentioned some parts on, River Survival Mode goes, because obviously that we've actually decided able to, as we already established before, ever since in the actual, the first part of River Survival Mode, that we figure we might actually do 10 playthroughs of this mode, because, well, not only do we able to come across into, all 5 of the normal paths that we can able to take, but also that, although we'll explain more details onto this later. So for now on though, here we go, onto this final round we go, and excuse me, I got something in my throat there, so I must admit that I do apologize for that.
So anyways though, and I seem to get a little bit confused right there, so we'll just go ahead and take, and looks like the computer player stole the card,
so in this case we'll take, oh really?
I guess we're a little bit more of a blind syndrome like that, but
the only thing is kind of painful though is the fact that every time you miss your go, or in this case if you miss or anything like that,
no matter what though, of how many times you have to stick for all that for this particular minigame,
it'll probably drag out even more, because even then it probably took you about 2 or more minutes.
Yeah, which just kind of sucks though, but even then, no, that was the only minigame I actually not looking forward to replaying through over and over and over again. Despite the fact that we might actually just replay the actual minigame 10 times if we manage to go through all 10 playthroughs of the forms of River Survival Mode. But then again, we'll mention more details onto this whenever we get ourselves our next gem. So, but even then though, we did that pretty okay. So even then though, not the best run through in the entire parts of this minigame though, but pretty decent enough as it is.
Yeah, which is probably for the sake of being like this, so
anyways though, let's just get into the actual main discussions of the forms at this particular point today, because obviously at this point, that today's day was actually forms of the 28th of April. In this case, we've only got about 3 more days to go until when it gets to the point until the next month arises. So even then though, I've no idea why I just said that. What do I meant to say, Pinkie Pie? You meant to say is arises, as far as you might as well notice something like this, even for up ahead, when it comes to the actual next month, in this case the 5th month of 2019, so you get the suggestions for this point.
And obviously some more stuff has been happening ever since the past few days or so, I think I have not even mentioned about this a lot in the forms of in my Let's Play of Shadow the Hedgehog, because obviously I've got one last thing left before I'm done with this Shadow the Hedgehog Let's Play, before I finally coming back into Kingdom Hearts Final Mix. Although I still need to able to come back to NES Remix 2, but because of my Wii U save data has been corrupted, this means I have to go through the whole entire process again, which I'm hoping I will do that until at some point in the forms of like next month or so, or possibly this month or two, but even then we'll see what happens there. Alright, so looks like, oh, we got ourselves on new record for once. Yep, on that particular mode. So even then though, we got ourselves 195 balloons we've just popped. Yep.
A new record.
Yep, new record indeed. So even then, let's deserve a nice high five right there. So even then, that way we can able to continue just, you know, get some more time or what have you. So yeah, everything's all accounted for. Yeah, definitely true for that regard. So yeah, a few things we want to explain about this, speaking of such, is the fact that, well, finally, well, in this case, before we get into that, few things I want to explain about this is the fact that the new film just came out by the forms of, well, on the big screen anyway, which is known as Avengers Endgame. And we're not going to spoil things too much about that, because obviously this is the newly released film that has been came out with the entire Avengers series. But even then though, that's as far as I can usually think about it. And plus that film is over 3 hours long in comparison to the previous installments. Well, again, we're not going to spoil the ending too much, because obviously that, you know, if you guys have not seen the film before, then we're probably not going to spoil the ending for you, because obviously you really don't want to spoil for yourselves for that point too much about it. So, but even though that's, as far as the actual reviews of critics, and especially noticeable with fans alike, they really do enjoy it though. Yeah, but again, we're not going to spoil the ending too much about it, because obviously that, you know, when new things has been came out, we're not going to spoil things too much of it. So, anyway, so let's go with minor setbacks, and this time around though, we got ourselves a different course. Yeah, by all means by that is the fact that now we need to stumble across lesser amount of piranha plants, in addition with the introduction to the actual mud. So in this case, if you step onto the mud, then obviously it'll slow you down. Yeah, so keep that in mind, you always have to go onto the top portion of this particular section right there, and next thing you know, just keep on dodging those piranha plants at the very end, and we got ourselves a better run through this time around though, as opposed to the likes of how it does it on the first run through of this minigame. Then, you know, you get your suggestions for that point right there. So another thing I want to explain about this, potentially, speaking of such, is the fact that, well, we've only got about a few days left, or in this case, how much weeks we got left now for Detective Pikachu movie? I think it was actually by the forms of 12 days to go until the, although, yeah, just 12 days to go until Detective Pikachu will be on its way for the actual film itself. But I don't know if I would like to see it, but even then, we might be able to be curious to see how it turns out in the end. But even then, we'll wait until the actual reviews of that film were able to actually distort the release. So, here we go folks, onto this next new path that we can take, and that is the forms of cheap schools. Meaning, about the fact that we actually stumbled across a whole bunch of cheap, meaning, about the fact the matter is though, is that we need to avoid those at all costs, because if you somehow get hit by the cheaps or anything like that, somehow you get stunned and you weren't able to actually not to continue pedal for this point, as you can see right there. So, yeah, it's pretty simple kind of thing about it though. So even then, onwards to penguin pushers again. So, ever since we actually did this, done this, perfectly from last time. So hopefully we can able to do it perfectly again. But I'm not exactly sure if it depends, because obviously that, you know, sometimes computer players or teammates for ourselves sometimes always attempt to screw us over sometimes, but even then, that we can able to hopefully cope with it, I suppose. So anyways, let's see if we can able to get the last 6 of those penguins, as far as I can see on screen. See, aside from that though, when it comes to the actual uploading recording sessions, when it comes to river survival modes these days, that hopefully the actual uploading schedules between those videos is actually going to be a lot more shorter and quicker and faster in comparison to the forms of how it does it on the first part, because the first part I should say. This is only because of how the fact that we've already shown you guys the minigame instructions for all 10 of those river survival minigames, as far as I'm usually concerned with.
yeah, which is probably true for that regard, but I digress. And I believe, as far as I can usually think about it, that I believe we got ourselves about, I would classify for saying 3 weeks left until, well, I won't usually say 3 weeks left, but even then though, it's actually more than that potentially. But, even then though, that's as far as I can usually just try to describe about the forms of, like, Detective Pikachu film release as far as I'm concerned with. But also same applies for Team Sonic Racing for both versions, or in this case 3 versions as far as I'm usually concerned with, which is, you know, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and especially noticeable with the glorious Nintendo Switch version. So, but even then though, as far as I can usually think about it, speaking for the Nintendo Switch, the actual selling points with Nintendo Switch now is actually gone by almost 35 million units, which is pretty good if you ask me. But even though it did immediately bypasses the actual selling points of Nintendo 64 recently now. Yeah, and as a matter of fact though, that I think the actual Nintendo Switch selling points will actually go a little bit more slightly bigger when it comes to like the later months, and especially noticeable for beyond. And even then though, that could be far from the truth. And speaking of such stuff, when it comes to Nintendo 3DS Live is concerned, well, especially in terms of like the actual family for the Nintendo 3DS systems now, I don't suppose that, according to the forms of Nintendo from any sources for that matter, I really don't think they're actually going to be continue on with the first party games on the Nintendo 3DS now. Although the only game they have sort of that's left, it is Persona Q2, which apparently is more accurately, I don't exactly know how do I explain about that game, because we haven't exactly, well, we usually heard about it because of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. They managed to bring up Joker as a fighter, but even then, aside from that, that's as far as I can say about it. But anyway, so we come across into another 2 branching pathways we can go through, but of course we can never forget the forms of that particular minigame here, and it's home on the ring again. Yeah, just because of that Joy-Con explanation right here, so that we can able to hold it up vertically right there. So aside from that though, when it comes to the forms of other information, like, you know, the Nintendo might not actually make first-party titles these days on the Nintendo 3DS at this point now, just because of how the fact that I think Nintendo's now going to be focusing on 2 device of systems potentially, which is obviously Nintendo Switch because it's a newly released console, and especially noticeable with the mobile devices, meaning about the fact that, you know, with Mario Kart Tour will be on its way, and especially noticeable with Dr. Mario World, and hopefully things can get a little bit more interesting, to say much for that. So, but I'm not exactly sure if we could able to actually do with our Let's Play of Mario Kart Tour. But even then though, that we need to able to come across into our revisits from the Mario Kart's past, ever since back in Super Nintendo and beyond. Like for instance, that we really love to do Super Mario Kart one day, but at the moment right now, that we're not exactly focusing on that game just yet, because obviously that although we still need to able to redo our Let's Play of Mario Kart 8, or in this case to be more specifically though, Pinkie Pie, we'd love to able to do the Nintendo Switch version, so high-flying balloons as far as this particular new location is concerned. And obviously in this particular location is the fact that this place is going to be filled with, you know, jump panels and here and there, and, you know, every once in a while some of these balloons were able to actually, like, hover in the air, and then in order to actually get those nowadays is the fact that we need to able to use these dash ramps or the jump ramp. So, yeah, you get the idea for that. So, no anything new when it comes to, like, new uploading schedules for Capcom 74 at this point, just because of how the fact that, well, he was practically kind of busy at this rate, especially how the fact that he still needs to able to focusing on, you know, Zelda Breath of the Wild. Speaking of Zelda Breath of the Wild, actually, I have already mentioned about this before in the forms of my Let's Play of Shadow the Hedgehog recently, but, recently, about the fact the matter is, though, in about, I would say 3 days ago, actually, Nintendo has actually got ourselves the new updates between both Super Mario Odyssey and especially noticeable with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, meaning that about the fact that you can now actually able to use the VR Labo systems, even then though, as far as what I've seen from some receptions, but in forms of like the actual overall status when it comes to like the virtual reality experience for Super Mario Odyssey and Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'm pretty sure that Super Mario Odyssey does have its own content for the virtual reality goggles mode. Like, for instance, I'm pretty sure we need to be able to obtain every single musical performances, which even then, I suppose Mario should able to actually show that off until after whenever he come across into, like, every single, like, power moons after when he done through the entire 100% of the main game first. Oh yeah, including Luigi's Balloon World, of course, but even then, no, that's besides the point. Yeah, but even then, let's not mention things too much about it, because obviously, Mario hasn't got into that point yet, but until later on as it is. Well, thankfully though, you can able to actually disable the virtual reality kit at all, because even then, that's entirely up to you, because even then, do you want to really waste your money to able to buy the virtual reality kit? Or you can able to actually bypass it, and you can able to play it as normal. Like, for instance, you can able to actually play that mode as much as you please. So, but even then, that's besides the point for that speculation right there. And as far as Breath of the Wild performance on virtual reality, some people seem to think that it will able to actually make them a little bit sick. Like, for instance, that it might actually give you, like, dizziness or sickness or anything like that. You know, kind of like how it did on our experience on our own time, according to when you did mention to me back in a long time ago, that one time you did manage to pull up a 3D effect on for Rayman 3D, that we did manage to play it for a little bit, and next thing you know is that you actually did felt physically sick. But, you know, you probably get the suggestions for that point. I think it's mainly something to do with, like, if there's too much stuff on screen or something like that. But even then, no, that's why I'm not exactly a huge fan of 3D effects anymore. Well, it's kind of cool at first, but after a while, that just really makes me sickness will able to rise a little bit. Yeah, which is probably true for that regard, but even then, no, yeah. Alright, so we're now moving on to the next path that we can able to take. And that will have to be, as soon as that particular location pops up, now will have to be rocky sailing. So, because obviously there's going to be tons of rocks, and especially noticeable with, like, you know, just tons of rocks in general. So, I do apologize with my lack of dialogue for this point, because obviously we've already mentioned about this too much when it comes to, like, river survival mode as far as the actual system goes. And I think I actually saw that balloon over there just beyond here. So even then, let's go ahead and obtain that. And of course, the minigame we need to play is sort of fun. So, yeah, sort of fun, get it? Because, you know, it's kind of sort of fun, but even then, that's as far as I can usually think of. So, and another thing we should probably point things out, although we need to get back into the discussion about The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild for a second, because not only does it able to contain the actual virtual reality goggles function, it also did manage to able to actually get a little bit of an update, as far as I can usually think of, is the fact that they did manage to improve the loading times, which, thank the Lord, because sometimes that game can take a while to load, even if you really want to get to the bigger areas and stuff like that. I think that's the only reason why we've decided able to wait on that for a while, just because of that loading times can take a little bit longer compared to the forms of how it does it in the previous Zelda experience, because of how the fact that I think it might be take some a little bit more of a space. Although, kind of thinking about it, when it comes to the actual shrines and all that stuff, well, it probably take a little bit of a quicker time to load. Yeah, just because they are pretty much in the shorter areas and stuff like that, or in this case, in this matter, the smaller areas as far as you might think about it. So, but I digress. So at least I'm glad that's been a thing, because even then, that sometimes it just managed to make me feel like I was pretty desperate able to get into this next shrine or all that stuff, or in this case the next village or anything like that, but the game decides to able to load things up slightly longer, but even then, no, that's just besides the point. And this is what happens if you manage to let some of these balloons decides to manage to able to run away from you, and if it goes towards the end of that particular point, basically what happens is the fact that you can never grab that again. So, well, as long as you can able to actually still manage to able to obtain some until the later paths throughout this particular mode. So, but even then, we still got plenty of time actually, because even then, we've actually got into 200 seconds now. But even then, though, it might be a little bit lesser at this point, because there are a few times, though, that we keep on, you know, bashing into the forms of those particular rocks, or even especially noticeable with basically pretty much else for this matter. So anyways though, let's go to the left, because I don't think we've actually come across into the second goal right there. But even then though, we'd like to able to show these, you know, some of these sections off. So even then though, here we are on to, monster attack. Meaning, about the fact that if you couldn't tell with the forms of that particular silhouette, in this case by the forms of the underwater silhouette, blooper starts to shine. So even then though, every time you actually get sucked up by the forms of the blooper right there, basically you get stunned a little bit, and you weren't able to actually slow things down for a little bit. So, and, oh, can we get ourselves our balloon now? Of course we have. Of course, it takes you onto the exact same minigame from all over again, so, and vice versa though, really. So, there's also another update we'd like to point out, is the fact that, I'm very happy to say, is the fact that Super Mario Maker 2 finally got its release date. Well, it might take quite a few, well, I would say it took about 2 months to able to actually figure out what the final release date is going to be, but it's going to be released at some point a week after Crash Bandicoot, or in this case Crash Team Racing Nitro Field, meaning about the fact that Super Mario Maker 2 will be releasing until the 28th of June. Seriously, it's kind of like the same thing for how it does it in Mario Tennis Aces whenever they manage to show off those particular titles, and sure enough, they did manage to get themselves their release dates just after the E3 has been concluded. So, it's kind of weird if you ask me. I mean, what's next? I mean, like, Super Smash Bros. DLC packs or anything like that? Or in this case, Challenger Pack number 2, or Challenger Pack number 3, even though it might be a little bit of an earlier of development or anything like that. But even then though, speaking of the E3 this year, they're actually going to be able to making the Nintendo Direct appearance, and we got the exact same score as our previous attempts as far as our new record score is concerned. Yeah, I gotta say, that's pretty cool actually. So, I digress. So, with the forms of the actual, like, Nintendo's E3 this year, I believe it's gonna, once again, takes place in somewhat in Nintendo Direct of all things. You know, just like in forms of how it does it in last year. But even then, though, it might actually focusing on something else to the table. Like, obviously, they need to focusing on, Luigi's Mansion 3. And especially noticeable with, obviously, Super Mario Maker 2. And especially noticeable with, I don't really think that Metroid Prime 4 will be on there, because, obviously, Retro Studios needs to able to actually, restart the entire, game developing this in the actual, starting over cycle. And, that's as far as I can usually think about it. Although I really don't think Bayonetta 3 will be on there either, just because, well, it might be still also in development at the moment for the time. Oh guys, here's the mega blooper! And we almost gonna get sucked in, but in order to actually escape from that, well, obviously we need to keep on paddling by shaking the actual Joy-Con. Even though you can't really attack him though, unlike in the Glooper Blooper boss battle from Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, well, from Dream Rafting. So, it kind of makes it obvious, because even then though, since we're going to be, you know, using the pedals for the entire time, rather than just keep on tilting the actual, like, floaty platform or anything like that. But even then though, that's besides the point. And there goes our second goal in the actual river survival mode. We'd like to able to mention more details about Super Mario Maker 2 at this point, but as soon as I get back into Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, potentially until when it gets to the point until the beginning of May, then I shall be able to actually have more discussion upon that game until at some point whenever I get back in Kingdom Hearts Final Mix at long last, after when I finish up with Shadow the Hedgehog first. So as usual, it tells you about the actual detailed results for this point here. We still pedal lesser amounts of compared to the forms of the other 3 players, and we actually did manage to pop up, I would say, for about 11 balloons this time around though, which is pretty good, even then though, due to the extra time. But the only exception to this, however, though, is the fact that I don't think we've actually got ourselves our photograph this time around though, so, oh well though, bigger selves can't be choosers, I suppose. Yeah, definitely so. So, we got the endings off at this point here, so join us next weekend of our Let's Play of Super Mario Party. Is the fact that we're going to go through the 3rd playthrough of River Survival, but yet again with different characters. So see you guys next time. Later, fellas!